All right, let's jump right into this explainer. Today we're tackling one of the absolute most mind-bending questions of our time. Is our entire universe, everything around us, actually just an incredibly advanced computer program? I mean, for decades, this was strictly the realm of sci-fi. But today, seriously smart scientists, philosophers, and technologists are looking closely at the actual physics of our world to figure this out. So we're going to dive into what physics, computer science, and some really cutting-edge mathematics are actually telling us about the fundamental fabric of our reality.
To kick off our cosmic investigation, we have to ask ourselves a pretty weird question. How would we even know if everything we see and touch is just rendering around us, kind of like a player in a hyper-realistic virtual reality game? Think about the insane, rapid advancements we've seen in our own technology. I mean, look how fast we went from literal blocks of pixels to these massive, totally immersive open worlds. If a civilization had, say, a million-year technological head start on us, their video games wouldn't look like pixels on a screen. They would look, feel, and behave exactly like the universe we are sitting in right now.
This specific concept has been heavily championed by thinkers like philosopher Nick Bostrom and MIT computer scientist Rizwan Virk. They suggest we might actually be living inside what's called an ancestral simulation. Basically, think of it as a reality built by a highly advanced future civilization specifically to replicate or study their own evolutionary history. It's like they're just running the tape forward to see what happens to their digital ancestors. But if they did build us, you really have to wonder about the motive, right? Bostrom actually speculates that these future civilizations might run these simulations for things like historical tourism, or pure entertainment, or even to scientifically study how different superintelligences evolve. Notice how these mirror the exact same reasons we humans create video games today. We build complex digital worlds to entertain ourselves, to study complex systems, and to culturally explore our own past. Rizwan Virk points out something super interesting here. With the rapid advancement of our own AI and VR, we are fast approaching this inevitable simulation point, where we ourselves will be perfectly capable of creating all-encompassing virtual worlds, totally indistinguishable from reality. He notes that the evolution of our games, augmented reality, and quantum computing is hurtling toward a massive technological singularity. And the logic is pretty hard to argue with. If we can eventually reach a point where we create these realistic simulations, the odds are incredibly high that someone else already did, and we're just currently living inside theirs. Okay, so this brings us to a really crucial test. If we are actually existing inside a finite computer system, that system would inevitably need to conserve processing power, right? Game developers today don't render the whole universe all at once. They only draw the environment when a player actually looks at it. So, if we want to prove we're in a game, we basically just have to catch the universe in the act of trying to save memory. And there's a truly fascinating paper by a team of scientists, including Tom Campbell, that hypothesizes exactly this. They suggest that to save computing work, reality is only actually calculated when a conscious player looks at it. Think about it. The rendering engine of reality wouldn't waste precious graphics card power drawing a falling tree in an entirely empty forest. It only computes the fine details, the splinters, the termites, the falling leaves, at the exact microsecond a player's avatar wanders by to observe it. And amazingly, we can actually see this kind of behavior play out in the classical double-slit experiment in physics. If you shoot a particle without looking at its specific path, it acts like a fuzzy, undefined wave of possibilities. But the very moment you install a detector to actively watch it, boom, it immediately snaps into being a definite solid particle. It's exactly what you'd expect if a simulation engine suddenly had to generate a physical object simply because a player looked its way. The plot really thickens when we compare that classical setup to Wheeler's delayed choice experiment. This shows that if the choice to detect the particle is delayed until after it supposedly passes the slits, the universe somehow still knows exactly what to do. The final result on the screen is dictated purely by whether the data will eventually be available to an observer. It's totally independent of the detection machinery itself. Let's see how this builds into the ultimate test for cosmic glitches. Scientists use something called a delayed choice quantum eraser to see if the universe literally waits to render reality until the exact moment data is required. They fire a pair of entangled, connected photons. One goes to a screen while the other goes through a crazy maze of beam splitters that tracks its exact path. But at the very last microsecond, that tracking data is either randomly capped or completely erased. Here is the absolute magic of this setup. If the path data is erased before a human actually looks at it, reality reverts right back to a wave pattern. The universe simply refuses to render a definitive, solid history of the particle if the data isn't going to be consumed by a conscious observer. I mean, talk about wildly efficient resource management on a cosmic scale. But hey, what if you're thinking, I've totally seen a glitch myself? You know, a weird feeling of déjà vu or seeing something glitch out in a mirror? Well, Bostrom remains pretty skeptical that we'd ever catch them slipping. He notes that a super advanced simulator could easily just cover its tracks. If you saw something you weren't supposed to, the system wouldn't crash. It would just roll back the clock an hour, erase your memory, reload a previous save point, and patch the bug. Now, right when you might be fully convinced we are undeniably living inside a giant quantum PlayStation, an incredible plot twist emerges from some recent physics research out of UBC Okanagan. While quantum mechanics definitely seems to point toward a simulated reality, these researchers decided to see if the actual fabric of the universe could truly, fundamentally be computed by step-by-step algorithms. Physicists Dr. Mearfeisel and Dr. Lawrence M. Krauss mathematically demonstrate that the underlying foundation of reality operates in a way that literally no computer algorithm could ever replicate. As Krauss emphasizes, space and time don't just exist within physics. The fundamental laws actually generate space and time. And the incredibly complex math required for this generation steps completely outside the boundaries of any standard step-by-step algorithmic code. They base this huge claim on Gödel's incompleteness theorem. This theorem basically proves that there are undeniable mathematical truths in our universe that simply cannot be computed using step-by-step code. A computer is trapped, right? It can only follow its programmed logical instructions. But because our physical reality harbors these deep truths that exist entirely outside of provable step-by-step logic, it relies on a foundational bedrock that a computer could just never, ever reach. So, putting these two heavyweights head-to-head, we see that while a simulation is strictly limited by its algorithmic rules and its computing power, our physical reality fundamentally requires a non-algorithmic foundation. Sure, an algorithmic simulation is incredibly impressive. It can dynamically render photons on the fly and fake an entire cosmos to save processing power. But a true non-algorithmic reality operates on a much deeper level of profound truths that physically cannot be programmed into an engine. It doesn't matter how beefy that post-human supercomputer is. This leads to a massive paradigm shift. It means the matrix we live in isn't some literal server rack humming away in an alien basement somewhere. Instead, space and time themselves actually emerge from a hidden, non-computable layer of pure information, what is often referred to as the Platonic realm. The very foundation of existence is generated through a profound form of mathematical understanding that completely, totally defies computer logic. As we close out this explainer, if our reality truly relies on a profound truth that transcends any possible computer algorithm, we're left to wonder what that reveals about the limitless nature of your own mind. If the universe requires this non-algorithmic understanding to exist, and your conscious mind is the observer that forces this universe to render itself into reality, well, maybe human consciousness isn't just a simulated byproduct at all. Perhaps you are the very thing the cosmos relies on to exist. Let that sink in for a minute. Thanks for exploring this with me. Keep questioning reality.